All right, good morning, everyone. It is here right at 9:10 a.m. here on Wednesday, November 12th. It appears we do have a quorum, so I do hereby call this ad hoc committee meeting of the Industrial Development Board to order. First item call to order, which we just did. Moving on to item number 2, public comment period. Public comment period. The Industrial Development Board holds a designated public comment period at each meeting. Members of the public in attendance may provide comments to the board or its committees during such designated time. Members of the public are allotted 2 minutes for public comment. No advance registration is required. With that, is there anyone here from the public wishing to speak today? All right, seeing as how there is no one here from the public wishing to speak today, we will close the public comment period. Moving on to item number 3 of the agenda, approval of prior ad hoc meeting minutes. These were included in the link that went out, but I'll give everyone a quick moment to take a look at those. Great discussion points from our last meeting, really good discussion. But I'll give everyone a moment to take a look at that, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve. I'll entertain a motion to approve. All right, thank you, Board Member Wright. Is there a second? Board Member Haston, thank you. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say nay. All right, motion carried. Thank you. All right, so as far as on today's agenda, did want to do some follow-up on Denver. There was a couple items that have come up since I presented this a few months ago and since I had done the initial research. So I thought it was very pertinent to some of the discussions that are going on currently. There's some major legislation that will be going before the council here next month, zoning, and we've talked about that with a lot of cities. So thought this was applicable to that, and certainly Denver was one of the pure cities we chose to kind of look at and study what they're doing. So I'll go through this, and then for the last half of the meeting, we do have representatives from Dominium here. They're obviously on the agenda for our main meeting, and so certainly with their expertise in affordable housing development, want to get their thoughts on what they're seeing certainly across the country and what challenges they're having, and certainly what they see as things our board can potentially do within our purview of what we can do that can assist them and assist Nashville to continue to meet the need for affordable and workforce housing. All right, with that, I'll jump right in. So before I get in, so let me start. This is front and back. I like to save the trees. So this is a front and back document. All right, so a couple things on background just on Denver. So population, over 700,000 people. 44,000, that's the number of new housing units. That's new that they need to create over the next decade according to the city's Department of Housing Stability, which we've discussed that department previously. Current median sales price is $585,000. So that's roughly about 100,000 more than Nashville, just for comparative purposes. AMI for one person is 98,000. AMI for a family of 4 is 140,000. I'm going to skip around. If you will, turn it over to the back for me. And I want you to look at the bottom, state of Colorado. Because as I did some additional research since I presented this, I found that the state of Colorado is getting heavily involved in affordable housing. So a couple things that stand out. We know Denver, it's a great place to live by all accounts, and it's growing, which is why there's the need for affordable housing. But also what I didn't realize was the state overall is the 6th least affordable state in the country for housing. So it's not just Denver, the entire state of Colorado, which was interesting to me. 61% of low-income renters earn between 51 and 80% AMI and have what is considered a severe cost burden when it comes to housing. So again, that's That's not just Denver, that's the state of Colorado. Interestingly enough, well, I saw this was interesting, but made a lot of sense. So the state of Colorado is actually going to require all cities within the state of Colorado that have a population of 500 or greater to create a housing action plan by January 1st, 2028, and every 6 years thereafter. So that's a actual state of Colorado requirement that's being enacted. And then the state will also provide grants to help create action plans. And beginning in 2027, those state funds will be prioritized and preference given to those municipalities and cities that have created and established the Affordable Housing Action Plan.
That's very interesting.
Hey, this is why I'm working for you, working for us. This is very, I mean, it was really interesting. So thought that was interesting. Then I'll come back to some of the state items as well. So if you will, turn it back over to the back, and then I'll just go in order. So one big thing, which all of us, the three of us, work in real estate, so we understand some of these challenges, especially with ground up development. But couple items that are recently, within the past several months, have been passed specifically when it comes to the city of Denver is, one, the city council recently repealed the city's minimum vehicle parking requirements. You no longer need to include a minimum number of parking spaces for the development.
No? Wow.
And so that's for market rate and affordable?
I think that's for, yes, that is both, correct.
Cool.
Now, what's interesting is, so the reason going back to the state, this is actually was a bill passed initially within the state. The House was a House bill with the state of Colorado. So essentially, the city of Denver repealing this minimum is essentially aligning with the laws of the state currently.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that's interesting. So again, I guess my point being, this is another item that started with the state of Colorado. And why is that? Well, a couple of things that stood out to me. Each structured parking space can cost as much as $50,000. So the idea, which I have my thoughts about we've probably all been at some developments, right? Especially you go back before some of the ride share services, okay?
Right.
Where maybe you had people that had more vehicles, right? So I've certainly been at places where you're like, well, they ain't doing enough parking,
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
more parking adds cost to the project, which is then people have to pay more, whether you're buying or you're renting, right? So the thought process is, hey, their thought process in reading some of the thoughts from the officials was, why, we're trying to bring costs down, so let's do this. And also the thinking was, hey, if you build a development and you have parking, maybe not everybody has a vehicle.
Yep.
But if they live there, even if they don't have a vehicle, essentially they're still paying for the parking, right? Because it's included in the rent or the cost of buying, right? So the thought process is, well, this is also the way of people that don't have vehicles. Why do they need to eat that cost? Because some people don't.
It definitely is a cost.
Yeah.
It's also like a space constraint. Like I know I have data from our own properties where our residents on average don't have more than one car per household, even if we're on a transit line. And if we know Nashville's largest need is for larger families, but they don't have more than one car, but we're having to provide 3 spaces, that's also land that's eating into where you could build more housing for families. So it's not just a cost constraint, but it's a housing.
Yeah,
But we still have parking requirements.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing a project right now where it's 3 stories. Well, we could have done 3 stories with each story having units. But the first story is actually
The garage.
Parking. Yeah, garage parking.
Because going on, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
that you take
that's
it
all
from-
level. Yeah, we're just going
Right.
up and
You did the first level could have been units, but you
Yes.
basically made the first level the garage.
garage.
And I'm assuming you didn't go underground
No.
into a garage just due to the cost. Obviously, that gets
Correct.
expensive.
But I'm losing probably,
Right.
that one has 18, so I'm losing 9 units right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I could have put. We have parking on the site. It's almost an acre and we have 2 buildings.
Sure.
But because there's 34 units in total, you need so much parking. And so we had to give up really 9 units to add the parking.
Do you mind sharing where this is? Like
Oh, it's
what
in
area of
Antioch.
town? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can understand the requirement, but like I say, it's next to close to the interstate. There's a bus line that runs through. And I I doubt, it's only about drive, but I doubt.
Oh, yeah, okay, I got you.
I
That's over
doubt.
like near Harding.
Yes. I mean, you can just walk around the corner, you can see the interstate. So I doubt there's going to be like 2 parking spaces per unit or something like
Hopefully
that.
you don't have to drive over there anyway, because
I know.
candidly,
I know.
yeah, that's a
So-
parking
I
lot.
guess, like,
Yeah.
just to tout some of the work that Nashville is doing, I mean, I'm excited personally for one of those suite of housing ordinances that is moving forward, one of which,
You're talking about that's on the agenda for December?
so this one was actually pushed back to January, Travis. So, this is an affordability bonus legislation, also enacted by the state that the city is now pushing. But as a part of that, for some of these newly, correct me if I'm wrong, Travis, on some of these newly classified zoning districts, it wouldn't fit yours.
Right.
But for the RL districts currently, or what's being proposed, if you're setting aside X number of units, or X number of percentage of units for affordable housing, then you get a density bonus, and you might get a reduction in your parking as well. So,
That sounds good, yeah. Yeah, that does sound good.
The other item, and feel free, I mean, for this, we have a lot more flexibility, so like I like the discussion, so, feel free to chime in. The other thing that stood out to me on this new parking standards were, and again, we work in real estate, so we understand going through the planning process, permitting, which I'll talk a little bit more about here shortly. But the other thing I read in my research is the city of Denver thought that getting rid of this parking requirement, obviously again to align with the state, but the other piece of it is that they said it's going to reduce nearly 650 hours spent annually by the planning staff on calculating parking requirements. So,
Are you serious?
that's half of somebody's full-time job.
I know. Just to sit and calculate parking spots.
just to do, so, I mean, it's funny,
Yeah,
right?
I know it is funny. It's
But
very funny.
you think about, all right, we're trying to move quickly, right? You're a developer, time is money. Maybe you haven't even closed on the property yet, right? So you're dealing with a seller that's like, hey, you got my property tied up under contract, let's go. Trying to go through all of this. And also for you, I mean, you gotta go. Like, this time is money. So, part of this also from the city of Denver overall is how can they be more efficient when it comes to like all of this. So if you think about that 650 hours that can be used in a different way, right?
Right.
No, and again, I thought that was just calculating
I
the
know.
requirements.
I was thinking about delays. I mean, your civil guy sends a plan over. You think you've calculated all correctly, and they come back and say, you know what? You need 2 more spaces. So
now everything changes.
yeah, now you're 30 days.
Yeah.
Now you got to send it back. They got to put it back on their schedule. Then send it back, submit it. Then hear from them again. So yeah.
Then you have the seller that's like,
Oh, yeah.
well, you want more time? How
Yeah,
much
that-
is it worth to you?
I'll get ready to get there. 'Cause that's the next one.
What's it worth to you? You need an extension? What's it worth to you?
Oh, them extensions.
So, yeah. So, the other item which stood out to me, obviously, is this is something that's been discussed certainly quite a bit here recently in Nashville. And in Denver, where I was going, they call them granny flats. But accessory dwelling units, DADUs is what we have here. So one of the things that was actually just instituted this summer in Denver as well is that ADUs are now permitted in all zoning districts that allow residential use. So if you look at this, which I wanted you all to see this, I thought it was interesting in Denver. If you look, just going back 10 years, right, for their ADUs, permits for ADUs, you're looking at going back to 2012, right? 2013, 2014, 8. Then you see 2015, 23, but you never see it hit above 100, right? And maybe 2020, that was the height of the pandemic, so you see a dip from 82 to 57. And then what do you see? 2021, 2022, 2023, gradually coming back up. In 2024, that's 138, excuse me. But already in 2025, there's been 127. So the thought process now and this just passed earlier this year. So the thinking is that this year is going to exceed 2024. And I would think if we take a look at this next year or 2 years from now, you're going to see this number continue to increase, right? And so, yeah, we joke, like call it granny flats, but this is certainly a real viable option for individuals, and it comes back to the conversation around increasing density.
Yeah, I've noticed, especially in the area that I live, before you get the DADU overlay, how much wasted space for a detached garage. Everyone's got a detached garage. Your house is here, your garage is way down here when you could have actually put something above it and made use of it. So, I think it should be, I think if Nashville had that, it would really increase, having places to stay and usage.
Do you know if it's only rental, or can they parcel off the
That's a good question. Yeah.
ADUs?
I'm not sure about that.
So I know that's been a question that I don't think Nashville will go that route, but I know there's supposed to continue to be rental in Nashville. Do you also know if they had lookbooks or like they had pre-approved plans? Because I think there's data in Nashville that even
I didn't see that in the research I found.
Okay.
They may though. I
Okay.
didn't see that.
So it's like in Nashville, and again, Travis, correct me if I'm wrong, the uptake even in these historic overlay districts in Nashville has been slow. Mm-hmm. Nowhere near the numbers here.
Right.
And I'm curious if maybe the reason why they're seeing more numbers is if they've somehow simplified the process with which you can build an ADU, other than just like allowing it. Is there, because as we know, real estate is complicated. Mm-hmm. No one understands the permit process if you're not in it.
Yeah.
And so what are ways that you can kind of make it easier for folks?
Yeah, because I know in Nashville, if you don't have the overlay, and even if you're that's one issue I think is being resolved too. Even if you're zoned for, say, an R6, you can build 2 units, but you don't have the square footage, and we're talking like you could be shy of 200 or 300 square feet. You still have to go through an act of Congress to be able to put.
Well,
I that in the back.
I'm not. So interesting. So I have a neighbor in my neighborhood that had this. I won't go say like give details, but it was kind of the same concept. Which I'm like, what? Their lot is like zone R6 already. Mm-hmm. So, but there was something with something. So I don't know if it was the overall square footage, but I can't remember if it was the property or something, and they had to go through and get a variance and all this stuff, and I was just like,
yeah, same way. Yeah, we've got a lot of those. Yeah, 33
like
by
there's
150 lots.
there's dadus up and down everywhere in the neighborhood.
Yeah, what happens a lot of those, you have, especially where I live, is you have a lot of 50 by 150s, and then you had some of the lots that were combined and they split them, made them 33s. And so you were under that square footage. And to actually put that deal in the back, because I had a neighbor that had to do this, you had to go through the variance process, sign in the yard. I was like, just to add a kitchen. You can put a bathroom, but you can't put a kitchen in it. Yeah.
Now, I'll say this as well. Mm-hmm. I've been talking to some residents that are constructing dadoos currently, and you all know because you do development, but I mean, it is interesting. So I'll see if I can find out anything else on that. But I mean, certainly, construction costs have gone up substantially. So you're like, oh, it's a dadu with 2-car garage at the bottom. No, I mean, that's concrete.
Yeah.
With living space above it, and I was talking to some people about the cost, and I was like, oh wow. And I know people that built dadus just a couple years ago, and what's changed. So
It's
that's
been the
another.
cost of a house to build a dadu these days. I mean, I've talked to my architect, and they're designing them, and they're at one point, because material thing like 2022, something like that, it was over $200,000, $300,000 to build some of these garages. They were really dadus. It was crazy with the material costs.
Now maybe those people they won't.
Maybe
The 300 is the high. Maybe the high end.
Maybe it's a
finishes.
3-car garage with a.
Yeah. But it does speak to the challenges, right?
Right.
But more than anything, the point here is just on the push and commitment to the increased density, right?
Right.
Trying to work to increase supply. All right, I'll run through a couple of these other items quickly. Let's see, affordable unit requirement. So Denver requires new residential developments of 10 or more units to include a certain percentage of affordable units. If they don't, developers can pay in lieu of, and these fees range between $250,000 to $478,000 if they choose not to. The fee is primarily used to offset the cost of building permit fee reduction incentives offered through the Housing Affordability Program.
Interesting.
And then any remaining funds can be used to build or preserve rental housing for households up to 80% of the AMI. 2, production or, and listen, both of these items are build, produce, or preserve. So again, we've talked about that as a strategy. Obviously, we've got some developments coming before us here shortly, new developments, but what are we doing also to preserve, right, the housing where people live currently? So it's a multifaceted challenge.
That's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
So second item is production or preservation of for-sale housing for qualified households earning up to 100% of AMI. And then 3, provide buyer assistance, such as help with down payments for households earning up to 120% of AMI. So those 3 items are just any remaining funds from the building permit fee reduction that are left over can be used for those 3 items.
Gotcha.
You had a comment?
Yeah, so this is incredible detail. So Tennessee doesn't allow for inclusionary zoning, so that first bullet doesn't really apply to us. But that is really interesting about
Which bullet?
the first one, about the,
Fee and lieu.
but, I mean.
Oh, you're talking about the main
Having
one.
to include affordable housing, like
Yeah.
that's a stick from the state's eye, or view, so we can't do that in Tennessee, but that's really interesting about the building permit fee reduction or just diversion of fees to go to these certain things. That would be really neat if Nashville could do something like that. I think it might be a nice incentive to encourage more folks to look into it. I know we can't have impact fees, but we also have water, sewer, tap fees, which are also pretty sizable.
Yes, they are.
So if there's a way, maybe we could figure out how to either waive a portion of those if they include a percentage of affordability. That would be a really neat.
Yeah, that's a good incentive right there. Yeah, because that's a huge fee.
Yeah.
Especially the larger development, the larger the fees. Even sometimes on small projects, they can get pretty hefty. I was just noticing how it seems like the 120% is the new. Well, 80% is the new. I get it back.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Yeah, I got you.
80%, 120% is the new 80% now. So they're actually bumping it up. Because you used to not see 120% mentioned that much. It was always 80%. So that's kind of good. Trying to match it up with inflation. But yeah, Josh, that's a good point. We could actually incorporate something for affordable housing in lieu of that fee. I think a lot of people would jump on that because those fees are those impact fees are a lot if you do a large project,
Well, it's also,
especially multifamily.
I guess from my purview, if part of our goal as a city and as a board is to build mixed income housing, this is a potential way, instead of having 100% affordable developments, which are needed,
Right.
but, but maybe this is another pathway to get some of those units.
Yeah, you kind of balance it out. You know, you have some, lower units in there, maybe low income and affordable versus some market rate.
Yeah.
Then it kind of balances out the entire portfolio of your project and not so much concentration on one. So yeah, I think we need something like that. We need to push it since we didn't get the other. Yeah.
All right, great options. All right, couple more quick items. So we talked about this somewhat already with the parking, but earlier this year, the mayor of Denver also signed an executive order to overhaul the permitting process. So this was also something that really stood out to me. Any delays on the part of the city will result in a potential refund of thousands of dollars of an applicant's fees. The executive order does two things. One, it consolidated 200 city employees across 7 different departments into a newly created Denver permitting office. So that's a strong commitment right there. And then essentially, and this was quoted in the information I read, there's a 180-day shot clock that starts from the moment a permit is submitted. And if the city fails to deliver a decision within that time frame, then the applicant could receive up to $10,000 in return fees.
So this is
an executive order. Yes, it was.
Okay, so it just started. I would love to see how this works out.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a pretty bold commitment.
How do they know if the developer and the consultants are submitting, quote, good plans?
Yeah.
I think that's a common complaint that I've heard voiced here locally. I know, again, Nashville has done a really good job implementing the expedited permit review process if you include affordable units.
Right.
So I'd be curious to know about this 180-day clock. Is that
That had to be after
they just say no, or they have to approve it, or that's the first round of comments, or
It couldn't be the first round because you could spend months, before you get the grading permit. So it would definitely have to be after all plans are approved and permit is issued.
I'll see if I can do some more research.
That's right. You did say that.
Some of us don't have assistants to do our research.
We're trying to say, not kidding. But you did say it's the permitting office, so it would have to be during that permitting phase.
And the whole idea, I guess, big picture is there's a commitment, right?
Right, just to get it through.
To try to get through the red all the tape and all that stuff and really try to expedite it because again it's time, money, and also delivery of units.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they have some kind of if you don't respond within 2 days, it stops the clock or does something.
Sure,
exactly.
exactly.
You sit there for a month and not respond.
And then in conjunction with the state, there's also an option for a 90-day fast track review for eligible projects. So again, alignment there with the state and the city. And then the last item on here, because we kind of talked about the state items already in detail. So it's another focus on middle income housing. Obviously, we talk here in the projects we have before us today are affordable housing, but again, we need housing all sizes, at all income levels, right? And so Denver also enacted a new pilot program specifically aimed at incentivizing developers to build more units for those with incomes between $60K to $100K. That stood out to me because some of us in this room probably have a different perspective, but there was a time when 60K or especially 100K, that was okay.
Yeah, I mean what assistance you need for that,
So I thought that was that really stood out to me that that's where we are, right, with cost. And then as part of this program, rental units must be deed restricted for 30 years to remain affordable to households earning less than 100% of the area median income.
They use some really different numbers in here, 100% of AMI. And I was thinking, Nashville, what did it say that? It was $130,000 household could afford a house, average house? of $400,000.
Yeah.
So even 60, I don't know what was we didn't have a number for the average cost of a house in Denver, did we?
Yeah,
Do you have
Yeah,
that?
it's almost 600.
585.
Median sales price is almost 600.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, well, that math definitely doesn't work, because the developer can't build, if that's the median cost of a house, someone making 60 to 100K would even qualify. That's like a $207,000 house, maybe three at the max. So it's a interesting concept, but well,
Not sure.
yeah, maybe that's individual. I mean, household could be 120 or 200.
Do you know what percentage of the property taxes are abated?
I don't.
Okay.
For the pilot, I'm not,
Yeah.
yeah, I can.
And what
And this is new, so I'm not sure what percentage.
is, again, Nashville does have a mixed income pilot program.
That's right.
Through the
And-
Health and Ed Board.
Which, and just for some background, we did have discussions about that several years ago and looked into it. Unfortunately, there's some state law that prevented this board from doing that mixed income pilot.
At the time, I think that legislation was changed last year.
Yes.
But just for clarification, or in case you're curious, Nashville's mixed income pilot, they cap affordability at 75% of AMI.
75% okay.
And it's a tiered approach based on the location as well as the amount of affordable units, or percentage of affordable units included in it. I cannot remember if it's just rental, but if you're in the UZO, you can get upwards of 80% tax abatement.
All right. Well, great discussion. Any questions or further comments on this?
Yeah. Well, I guess, it's still, the end goal is to actually take all these cities and do a comparison against what Nashville is doing and see what we can pull from these other cities and incorporate here. Because I'm seeing a lot, we're doing some things. It just seems like the other cities are a lot more aggressive and more directed to the affordable housing issue. It just seems that way, but we're on our way.
Yeah, I don't want to discount anything that Nashville's doing. I think a lot of ways that these other cities and states have been more aggressive is a fact of, or attributed to the legislation that they're allowed to do. So like a lot of these subsidy programs are funded via some form of income tax, either at the state or local level, or bonds. So we learned from your presentation that they had a GO bond issuance, but that was, I think you said it was a referendum.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so they have other tax mechanisms that we don't have.
well,
Denver has an income tax?
the state level.
State level? Okay, yeah, we do not, so that does.
I think Colorado also had the first mixed income housing tax credit. I think that unveiled this year. So I don't know how that's going, but that might be interesting as well.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure. Does Texas have a income tax?
They do not have an income tax,
No income tax.
but they do have a lot of other fees that can then be reverted.
Yeah, we just talking about all the states that have. Colorado doesn't have income tax, but no, it does, but Texas doesn't. What's the other two states, cities?
North Carolina, so that was Charlotte. They also have a state income tax. Louisiana has a state income tax. I think that was,
It was Charlotte, Asheville,
yeah.
So they're probably pulling from
Austin.
those.
Yeah, Austin.
Yeah, we said Texas. Yeah.
All right. Well, wonderful, great discussion as always.
Great work.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, speaker presentation, affordable housing updates. We have the Dominion team here. I'll let you introduce yourself. But really, obviously, there's a lot going on with housing legislation here in Nashville. But certainly, this board, as we've discussed, we've been looking at some peer cities, looking at what they are doing, and so been a while since we just had a chance to get you in front of us. So I'll turn it over to you with our last 15, 20 minutes here, and just tell us what challenges you're seeing nationally, what momentum you're seeing, what you're seeing here in Nashville, and I'll turn it over to you. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
So you get to see some folks again that I know. But my name's Austin Holmes with Dominion.
You've been here before, I think.
Been here a couple times. Yeah, we like this room. We like this group. But yeah, I mean, happy to kind of get into this discussion and talk, as specifically as you want or as broadly as you want.
Broadly is fine. Just
yeah, so we can talk, just about the affordable housing landscape nationally, and then zoom in on Nashville. So there are definitely a lot of challenges. I think anyone involved in real estate knows with elevated interest rates, construction pricing that is a little bit calming down from its peaks, but still not down to pre-pandemic levels. It makes it difficult to get anything done anywhere. Additionally, land pricing is something that is not as competitive as it was in the 2021-ish time frame, but still very competitive, still really elevated in terms of land pricing. Land sellers tend to be folks that maybe have low basis into the land, or they've had it for a long time, and so as a result they're potentially very patient and not as subject to market forces in the way that a distressed existing asset seller might be. And so as a result, the land prices are able to stay pretty high. And of course, for the type of development that we do, particularly the low-income housing tax credit, having a higher land price is definitely is problematic. And so, those are some of.
Can you explain why? That's
for sure. So the with the low-income housing tax credit, you're able to get tax credits that you then turn into equity to finance the transaction that is then helpful to overall contribute to your capital stack. And so you get those tax credits for your what's called eligible basis, and land is the single biggest item that is not an eligible basis. So it's the biggest part of your budget really that you're not going to get tax credits for. And so that's why higher land pricing is the hardest thing probably for a low-income housing tax credit developer to deal with, given that you can't kind of make it back up with the tax credits. And so with those various buckets from financing cost, land, and in some senses construction costs remaining elevated, that does kind of present a challenge nationally for us to do these various transactions. Something that has changed from before to now that is improving is potentially bond availability. And so bond availability, we still, I think some program descriptions for Tennessee have just kind of started circulating in terms of what they're going to adopt. And other states around the country are figuring out how they're going to address things. But there was the federal change that went from a 50% test to a 25% test. And what that meant is that typically you have to finance a portion of these transactions with these tax exempt bonds, and the amount of the amount of bonds that you're going to need on any particular deal is going to be significantly dropped as a result of it being previously the case that you had to finance half of your transaction, 50% of that eligible basis with those bonds. Now it's only you have to do that with 25% of the eligible basis. So on any particular deal, the amount of bonds that you need is going to go down. And bonds are a scarce resource. Not every state is oversubscribed, but a state like Tennessee often is. Many states are. And so this drop in 50% to 25% test is going to have, free, as long as, the various states adopt subsequent legislation and rules around that kind of limit the amount of max bond requests you can go in for, then that should result in, throughout the country there being more bond availability. With more bond availability, that should allow for more transactions in the low-income housing tax credit space, particularly the 4% program space, to get done. So that's a positive thing that's changing. But with that, the benefit of using these tax-exempt bonds is they are a little bit more, from a cost of capital perspective, they are a little bit more favorable. And so you're going to be on some transactions in some states, in some areas, financing it a little bit more with taxable debt as opposed to tax-exempt debt. And so that's going to overall increase the cost of capital a bit for some of these transactions nationally. And so that will be a bit of a headwind for some developers. And just overall increase the cost there. So that's something, so there's pros and cons to that federal change that I described of going from the 50% test to the 25% test.
How do you think that would affect tax credit pricing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So tax credit pricing is super complicated, and it kind of depends on a lot of different factors. So, to directly answer your question, in a vacuum, if everything else in the world stays exactly the same and then you go from 50% to 25%, that should mean that more of these transactions are done, which is good, right? Because it's more of the housing we want to build. But with more of this housing getting built, there's a greater supply of tax credits overall out there in the market. And so with there being a greater supply overall in the market, and we're holding everything else the same, so we're saying that demand for those tax credits stays the same, supply and demand would dictate that the pricing for each of those tax credits would go down. And so that could be another challenge for a LIHTC developer, because the amount of equity they're getting for those tax credits that they have is potentially going down because the pricing's going down. So that's something else. But, that was a scenario in which we held everything the same. That's not, actually the case. There's a lot of other changes going on in the tax credit world, things even outside of the housing program. For example, and I'm not a full expert on this, but the slowdown and the phase out of a lot of the solar and ITC type credits that are also relevant for the tax credit market. And so as those things get phased out, again, it's an overall market of tax credits. And so as those things kind of get phased out, that could drive down the supply of tax credits in other areas, which then make the tax credits produced via our program a little bit, a greater share of the market, and so the supply and demand is very kind of difficult to speculate on, I guess, is what I'd say. But there could be situations in which pricing could go down. Yeah.
And Frank Hogan, I'm with Collier Securities. We're investment banker for the Dominion team. I think, back to your, one of your earlier points too, I think pricing, this 50%, move from a 50% test to a 25% test is going to be rolled out slowly. I mean, different states are dealing with it differently. We're based in Minnesota. State statute limits allocations to 55% of basis. Till, the state legislature acts, that's not going to change. So I think there are states like Minnesota, currently oversubscribed, where you may not see a change until the 2026, 2027 legislative session. So the impact on equity demand is I think we're going to see it over the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
So maybe a dip, but then it'll normalize at a higher level, or where it is?
I think it'll depend based, I don't know that we necessarily see, I think, the energy credit, is going to bring more money into the LIHTC space. But that, that's ultimately probably a finite amount. So. Yeah. I mean, I would say there's probably downward pressure on equity pricing, everything else being the same. Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, that's something that nationally we're dealing with. Just on something that impacts these transactions locally, but also is very relevant here is the entitlements is always a challenge. There are certain areas, I was talking to Frank just in the hall about where it makes sense to do these sorts of transactions, and you kind of need a few things to come together in order for those things to work, for these transactions to work out. Not always, but typically you're wanting to be in what's called a basis boost area, as that increases the amount of tax credits you're generating on a particular project. And so there's a map for that, and so those areas are changing, but those aren't every area. Additionally, in order to make these these transactions work because they're, you know, limited on the revenue side because you're restricting the rents. You do typically need some sort of a tax abatement. Those, in order just to, you know, make the overall math work. Not every municipality, whether we're talking Tennessee, Texas, or just all over the country, is willing to provide such a tax abatement. And it varies very much from municipality to municipality. So it could be this city is okay with it, and then this neighboring city is not. And you'll see that throughout the country and throughout different MSAs. And so it's definitely kind of a patchwork in terms of understanding where it makes the most sense to do these transactions. The best setups are areas where that tax abatement is something that is enshrined at the state level. So that comes to mind is a place like Texas or Florida, where you kind of know how you can move, whether it's this municipality or that municipality, you know what needs to be done in order. There's still entitlement hurdles and there's still difficulties, of course, but you know that the abatement is available to you, provided you do, you know, steps X, Y, Z. And so you're able to kind of understand that and just operate, you know, throughout different areas, knowing what to do. And then, you know, that's an aspect. And then also, of course, having a friendly, from an entire, just a local municipality that looks at affordable housing favorably, really, is really helpful in terms of getting the entitlements that you need, whether it's a rezoning that you need, or some states have, you know, specified affordable housing rate related entitlements like Texas does. And so, you know, a municipality that is just generally cognizant and understands the severe need for housing is very, very helpful on a broad level. But yeah, I can speak to more specifics.
Can you talk to maybe some differences, and you touched a little bit on Florida, but Florida and Texas that you can't activate here in Nashville or in Tennessee at large, that you think would be beneficial?
Yeah, so the statewide understanding for a tax abatement is the first thing that clearly comes to mind. And so I'll touch on some better things and some worse things. And so the statewide tax abatement would be good. So, you know, I'm not the biggest expert on Florida, but our company does do a lot of work in Florida, and I do a lot of work in Texas. And so in both of those places at the state level, there's an understanding of how you get a tax abatement. It's you partner with this sort of a nonprofit, or you do this or that. And Nashville itself actually has a similar setup where you kind of, with some consistency, can understand your ability to get a tax abatement. But that's really for Nashville specifically. So as you go out a little bit more broadly speaking, even if you have a zone site and everything should work, going to some of those other areas in the state of Tennessee, you don't necessarily know how you're going to get treated from that tax abatement perspective. And so that makes outside of an area like Nashville, going out to the counties a little bit more broadly speaking, that makes that a little bit more difficult relative to a place like Texas, where, you know, hey, you might not get the entitlements you need, you might not get the zoning you need, but you do know that, hey, if I get the entitlements you need and it's zoned correctly, I will be able to get this tax abatement per this state level rule. So that's something that, you know, could it be implemented in Tennessee, would be very, very huge, because then you could go to these other counties and know with certainty what your execution could look like, and you know who you need to talk to and set it up. It would already kind of be set up. So a state level tax abatement for these sorts of projects would be very helpful. So that's something that's maybe better in a place like Texas or Florida than a place like Tennessee. Something that's worse in a place like Texas than a place like Tennessee is, in Texas, there's a specific affordable housing level entitlement that you need called a resolution of no objection. So if you want to do a 4%, you know, bond deal in Texas, you need that municipality to approve your ability to do that affordable housing deal. Even if the zoning is completely fine and in place, and, you know, everything else is squared away that you would need it. You know, you're able to get the site under contract, you're able to get a issuer to issue you bonds, you're able to get all those things you need. The local municipality, the local city council can still reject your transaction. And so that, from an entitlement perspective, is very, very difficult to deal with, because there's a lot of NIMBY attitudes, and particularly, you know, we're talking about affordable housing, and so, you know, we all know the difficulties that sometimes you have to work through in terms of messaging and making sure folks understand the type of housing that you're trying to build and the reason for its importance, and the stigmas, that come with it. A lot of folks don't understand that, we're not really building Section 8 projects anymore. You go to city councils and they might literally think, those sorts of projects that were built in the past with entirely different program are what you're intending to build in their municipality. And so there's a lot of education and stigmas and things like that go with that make it very difficult on a municipality to municipality basis to get something approved, even if the zoning's in place. And so, you hear the traffic and this sort of arguments, those really are kind of all out the window because the municipality has already decided we think multifamily housing at this density makes sense at this location. But they still might not want, essentially, we've all heard the phrase, those people, they might not want those people living in their municipality. And so, and it's a very frustrating entitlement aspect because that's what they're saying. It's a those people argument, and that it's a particular issue with literally just their affluence. It's not anything else because they've clearly approved a multifamily at that location. So that's something that is present in a place like Texas that's not present in a place like Tennessee. If you're zoned and you can get your tax abatement and the numbers work and everything like that here, you can kind of go on down the road. And so that's something that's better here in Tennessee than Texas. I'm trying to think of any other, there are physical aspects to each states as well. The land availability is a very big different thing, I would say. So Texas is extremely flat.
A lot of rock here.
Yeah, a lot of rock here.
Why you didn't want to dig underground?
I know, I'm experiencing right now one that's rock everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're blasting on everything here, and so that adds cost, which hurts the feasibility of some transactions, and some places just aren't feasible to build. I mean, you look at a map of Nashville, and you look northwest, and you're like, oh yeah, you just can't really do anything over there. And that's not really the case for a place like Texas or a place like Dallas, where you can pretty much spread out in every single direction and have, no real limiting factor there.
10 miles down the street.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about Live Local, if you're knowledgeable about that?
Yeah, I'm not the most knowledgeable on that because I haven't done myself any transactions in Florida, but my understanding of Live Local is that it allows for, with the commitment to a 99-year affordability period, it allows for a tax abatement for affordable transactions throughout the state of Florida. And so that's the type of thing that I described as something that's, state level, that, so if you're, outside, a suburb outside of Orlando, outside of Tampa, outside of Miami, wherever you're looking to find land in the state of Florida, you can kind of know that, hey, if I go this route, I can have that tax abatement. And so it's, a business decision you got to make of, can you make that commitment and everything like that. But we found that it's pretty worth it, and it makes things work.
I'm sorry, we're gonna have to stop. Stop. Unfortunately, I know.
I had a question too.
I know.
I'm like, it's 10
And
o'clock.
let's do this. Let's plan to have you back.
Okay.
And maybe what we'll do is we'll pick up. If you can, do you want to say what your question is so we can kind of just have it to pick up from that, and I'll invite them back for a full ad hoc.
Well, I'm just really curious about zoning entitlements in some of other states and how that might be easier.
Yeah.
Or more available. You talked about the divider fee.
Yeah.
And the property tax abatement. I'd be curious to know more about zoning entitlements.
Yeah.
All right. So keep that in mind. What was your question?
it's just
I'm
like
writing this down so we can.
Infrastructure costs, how it's affecting the projects. That seems to be a big thing. Land costs might be coming down, but the cost of digging, blasting, getting that rock out is making the project sometimes not feasible. So I just want to know how it's impacting you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Can speak to both of those things.
Well, just due to time again. Great discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. With that, I do want to thank Metro Legal, Metro ECD, and certainly those from the public who have come to attend, and certainly want to thank our guest, Frank Hogan with Collier Securities. and Austin Holmes with Dominion for your insight. And certainly want to thank you, my fellow board members, for your time today. With that, it is here right at 10:04 a.m. I would ask our guest if you would be willing to come back again, maybe if not next month, maybe sometime in Q1 of next year, and we'll give you the full time and talk more. So really, thank you for your insights. All right, with that, it is 10:04 a.m. So we will adjourn this ad hoc committee meeting of the Industrial Development Board. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic day.